Today we're ranking beginner sport bikes for our 2026 buyer's guide from worst to best. You told yourself you want to start riding this year, and I'm here to help you make the right choice with your first sport bike. You don't have to break the bank or tempt fate with that clapped out 600 you found on Marketplace either. Let's start with the manufacturer making the most waves in the cultural zeitgeist, CF Moto, who find themselves dead last on the ranking. The CF Moto 300 SS is a bike that defies traditional market dynamics. It's a motorcycle that would have done very well for itself about 15 years ago when the Japanese were kicking off the displacement wars in the entry-level category as the 250s grew into 300s. But those days are long gone, and this motorcycle was a day late and a Chinese yuan short. Unless you are able to somehow time travel and proselytize riders from bygone eras with your CF Moto, this is not a smart choice. Buying this bike brand new as your beginner sport bike in 2026 might be one of the worst choices you could possibly make. Not only does this motorcycle feature an anemic 298cc single-cylinder engine producing just 29 horsepower, which makes it one of the least powerful motorcycles in the category, it also costs a rather shocking $4,599. The worst part is the resale value is completely non-existent, as I recently proved in one of my marketplace analysis videos, where a seller had their lightly used 300SS listed at $2,500 and could not get it sold. You will lose quite a bit of money buying this bike, and you won't have a great time riding it either. Remember, this is your starter motorcycle. It's meant to be a stepping stone, so you will likely sell it and move on to something else. You'll be better off not nuking several $1,000s if you can avoid it. And for the love of God, do not finance a 300SS. That's just adding insult to injury. CF Moto does feature another beginner sport bike, which we will discuss later in this episode, but for now, consider the 300SS a total pass. Let's head over to the land of the rising sun and see if Suzuki has something on offer for beginner riders. The GSX 250R might have you fooled with its Gixxer styling and nomenclature, but look closer and you will discover this is Suzuki pulling a fast one on you. As I mentioned in the 300SS reaming, the 250 category has not been relevant for over 15 years at this point. But Suzuki is a manufacturer that soldiers on blindly printing out motorcycles that have had their R&D paid for back in the first Bush administration. That's Bush Sr., not old George W. This motorcycle is powered by a fierce 248cc synthesis of metal explosions and controlled gases with two petite cylinders. This motorcycle will remind you of your terrible life choices every time you thumb the starter and feel those 180-degree power pulses. Producing a righteous 25 horsepower while somehow weighing a staggering 399 pounds, this motorcycle's power-to-weight ratio barely beats a Royal Enfield Meteor 350. This model also inexplicably comes with a mud flap, which is great if you're planning on going off-roading with it. Ask me how I know. This motorcycle was not developed for American markets, and it's a spillover from places like India, South America, or Asia. It only beats out the 300SS simply because it isn't Chinese. And even though it's a complete donkey, it's gonna run forever because it's a Suzuki. This bike will set you back $5,099 base MSRP, which is criminal given the bike that's on offer. Let's find some greener pastures with our next motorcycle. Okay, next up we have Honda's CBR 500R. If you've been around for a while, you know my feelings about this bike, but it's also that time of year when we get a whole new crop of beginner hopefuls whom I must indulge. This bike uses a 471cc parallel twin that's also a major snooze fest. This bike is also incredibly heavy. It makes just 47 horsepower and weighs about 425 pounds. That is insane. It's a bike that struggles to get out of its own way. Also, because it's a Honda, this bike was notoriously overpriced for a long time. Though the MSRP has been brought down for 2026, they knocked down a whole $1,000 off of this thing, and now it's $6,400 before taxes and fees. That's how you know how overpriced it used to be, that they were able to reduce the price by $1,000. This bike is fine, right? Even at their worst, motorcycles are fine, but it's so bloated and underpowered and too expensive and too damn boring. Again, this bike presents itself as a decent option for a larger new rider, someone in the 6 foot plus range, maybe someone who's a devout Honda loyalist, but it's not for riders who want sharp, nimble handling, excitement, or value. There's substantially better choices in the market. We're all just waiting for Honda to create a small bore version of their fantastic 755cc 270 crank found in the Honda Hornet 750, but until then, this 500 is a skip. The Kawasaki Ninja 650, the venerable big boy starter bike, the bike that just refuses to die or change at all. It's like a Pokemon you won't offer a sunstone to, thereby nerfing its evolution. It's become cemented in beginner bike lore, despite being outgunned by better performing or more interesting motorcycles on every end of the spectrum. I imagine dealerships love the Ninja 650. Someone comes in looking for their first bike, maybe they're on the taller side, or maybe the salesman can smell their deep pockets from a mile away. They'll say, Ninja 500? No way, man, come on, you deserve to be on a real sport bike. The Ninja 650 is just what you're looking for. And look, it's a fine motorcycle. It works, it's reliable, it has a little more juice on tap than your normal beginner bike. But it's so damn uninteresting. The 649cc parallel twin is completely overshadowed by the awesome parallel twins on the market these days. The suspension prioritizes comfort over feedback. It's easy to live with, but it's not going to be engaging. The handling is as uninteresting as the engine character. It's much more of a commuter than a canyon carver. You might look moderately fast to the layperson, but there are so many other bikes that are more fun and better learning tools if you really want to get good. This is a bike that's best for a low-key commuter Kawasaki fan who might be a bit too large to feel comfortable on a smaller bike. It's not for riders who want character or pizzazz or a riding experience that truly feels, well, sporty. The only real benefit here is that it is a plus-sized beginner motorcycle, which is still totally capable of being ridden by a complete novice rider. Beyond that, this one's a total pass. The ZX4RR is definitely not a boring motorcycle. It's got a tiny 399cc inline 4 that revs to the frickin' moon, for Christ's sake. But it's also not an ideal motorcycle for a true beginner. Let me explain. The ZX4RR is much more aligned with a super sport than any other motorcycle on the list today. So for someone who demands a screaming 4-cylinder, more up-spec suspension and brakes, and sharp handling, but wants a motorcycle that they can use much more of on the day-to-day compared to a 600, the ZX4RR could be the move. But being essentially a scaled-down super sport, it definitely has its compromises. With less than 400 cc's of displacement spread out across 4 cylinders, the torque is near non-existent, which makes going from stoplight to stoplight a major drag. As it makes all of its power at the top of the rev range, it's not going to be the easiest learning experience. This bike is also not ideal as a beginner bike because of the price, which is just shy of $10,000 at $9,700. That's pretty spicy for a first motorcycle that may be dropped or damaged as you get your footing. Not to mention how neutered the ZX4RR is here in the American market, which we showcased here on the channel. That's going to require some extra funds for an exhaust and tune when you become unable to live your life knowing there's 20 extra horsepower locked away behind the engine's pesky restrictive fueling. This bike really is best for an intermediate rider looking for a small sport bike for the track or for zipping through the twisties on the weekend. It's not super ideal for a true beginner who wants a machine that is fun yet practical for learning the fundamentals, despite its beginner-friendly credentials and specs. The Yamaha R3 holds a special place in my heart. This is the motorcycle that I learned to ride on, and it's hard not to have a soft spot for Yamaha R bikes in general. But at the same time, it's kind of sad the way that you can kind of see how the R3 has fallen behind in recent years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The R3 uses a 321cc parallel twin that makes just enough power to have fun with. It happily revs up to 12,000 RPM and just begs for you to stay on the boil. In that sense, it offers an approachable glimpse into the experience of riding a sport bike at its limits. Its lightweight and nimble handling makes it a great training tool for beginner track riding as well. The only real reason it lives around the halfway point of our ranking today is because, as I alluded to, it's sort of outgunned by many of the other bikes in the category that have seen way more substantial updates. The R3, despite receiving a recent styling update, is fundamentally the same as it's been since it debuted over a decade ago. The 321cc's of displacement is much more last gen than some of its class competitors. But that being said, it's a good bike for a Yamaha simp who wants to cosplay as Rossi without getting an R1. Someone who needs that R-bike style, maybe someone who wants to explore some track days. It's not for riders who want a beginner engine with more low-down torque, or riders who want the latest and greatest bike with the most features. Alright boys, please allow me a moment to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, DJI. DJI is now the exclusive action camera partner for Yami Noob. We've already implemented the Osmo 360 into our workflow and have been using the Osmo Action 6 as well. Sometimes direct sun causes the footage to look overexposed, and if it's too dark, it looks kinda grainy. Well, the Osmo Action 6 makes that a thing of the past thanks to its variable aperture, the first of its kind on an action cam. That means when you're riding at night, under bridges, or sunset back roads, the camera can open up to a low f-stop of 2.0, or it can go down to an f-stop of 4.0 during the day for sharper detail and better contrast. But you don't have to touch anything. The auto mode handles it for you. Pair that with the new 1/1.1 inch square sensor and super night mode, and suddenly night riding footage actually looks cinematic instead of embarrassing. So no matter what time of day you're shooting, the Osmo Action 6 handles the settings for you, making one less thing to worry about on your ride. Hit the link down below and check out the DJI Osmo Action 6, and thanks to DJI for the support. The CF Moto 450 SS is the first Chinese sport bike that genuinely disrupted the segment and put the fear of Mao Zedong into the Big Four. If you can get past the whole idea of supporting the CCP with the purchase of your motorcycle or that sleazy subscription bait and switch for global customers, the 450 SS punches pretty high above its weight class. It's got a 450cc parallel twin that actually has a 270-degree firing order, which is pretty uncommon for the beginner sport category. That firing order lends itself to better torque delivery as well as a more interesting and charismatic sound. Like all CF Moto products, it's jam-packed to the gills with features and farkles. It's got a huge TFT dash, Brembo brake caliper, ABS, traction control, LEDs, all that stuff. If this bike was made by a Japanese brand, it would probably be top tier in most people's minds. But it lands where it does because CF Moto still rubs a lot of people the wrong way, whether it be because of business practices or politics or a simple lack of market testing. People want proven track records of reliability, and say what you will about how, CF Moto's been building ATVs since the 80s, that doesn't mean a whole lot. They've been making motorcycles for like 7 years, and they learned how to do so from KTM, which is not exactly a vote of confidence. Or maybe KTM learned how to do it from CF Moto. Who knows? That being said, this bike is best for skibbity brain rot cultural nihilists born after the year 2000 who have no brand loyalty or moral compass. It's not for people who can afford Japanese motorcycles. The Aprilia RS 457 is the beginner sport bike people wanted but didn't think it could actually ever exist. It quietly changed the expectations for this category and over-delivered in many aspects. Beginner sport bikes are often underwhelming, compromised bikes that look the part but aren't tailored to the actual experience. They're soft, they're vague and conservative, they're designed for people to look fast and have fun while they learn how to ride. Aprilia swung the opposite way with this bike. The RS 457 is a real sport bike, just scaled down. It takes everything we love about the RS 660 and scales it down to an A2 compliant package. It has a 457cc parallel twin with a 270-degree crank. It sounds positively Italian. The chassis was designed for people who actually want their sport bike, regardless of the size, to be willing and compliant like a sport bike should be. It looks pretty fantastic as well, having the presence and curb appeal of a full-fledged machine while still being approachable in power and price. Aprilia could have priced this bike quite a bit higher, but they didn't. At just $6,900, you get a whole hell of a lot of motorcycle for the money. So why isn't it number one on the list today? Well, it's Italian. by way of India, and that scares a lot of people. Dealerships are less common, parts may be harder to acquire, and this bike is relatively new as well, and Aprilia sometimes has issues in the first few model years with their machines as they work out the kinks. I haven't heard much in the way of widespread issues with this bike, but you just have to put that disclosure in when dealing with Italian motorcycles. The RS457 is best for riders who are Euro-pilled and want the coolest, most well-equipped, most emotionally satisfying sport bike below 500cc. It is not for people who want tried-and-true platforms with decades of proven reliability, aka nerds. This bike is not for nerds. Alright, it should come as no surprise, our choice for the best beginner sport bike in 2026 is the Ninja 500. The Ninja 500 wins it out because it understands the assignment better than any other bike on this list. It's a bike that's not trying to impress you. It's not trying to earn your enthusiasm through tacky LED startup sequences, but it's also not a bloated, overweight, underpowered, ultra soft commuter bike. It's perfectly functional. It splits that difference perfectly. These bikes have been around for forever, as the Ninja 400 and the 300 before it, and even tracing its lineage back to the 250. So the platform is beyond proven at this point. Kawasaki knows how to build these bikes. The aftermarket is huge. You can kit it out as a small sport touring commuter or strip it down and build an apex carving track weapon. The Ninja 500 is the top spot because it is the smart choice. It is truly the gold standard. It requires no risk. You can buy one lightly used for $4,500, ride it for a year or two, and sell it to someone else for $4,500. Once that initial depreciation hits, they hold their values pretty well, as long as they don't become clapped to death by some degen kid who puts stickers from the Joker on it or paints the plastics with truck bed liner. For a beginner who wants a bike that they can expect to just work every time so they can focus on riding and learning, the Ninja 500 will provide that. It's not the sexiest bike, certainly not the most exciting or exotic, but it executes the assignment perfectly. It's the best for riders who want Japanese reliability, a fair price, and a bike that has a million times over proven its value. It's not for someone who wants extreme novelty or particularly upmarket experience. It's not for clout goblins who will spend more time flexing online than actually banking in some seat time. And hey, can we shout out to Kawasaki, which had 3 different beginner bikes on this ranking today? Maybe they are the goated entry-level brand. The Ninja 500 is a mousetrap, a perfectly engineered solution to the problem of the entry-level rider. Just buy one, call it a day. Alright boys, there you have it, beginner sport bikes ranked for 2026. Your first bike doesn't need to be the fastest or the coolest, but it just needs to be one that's going to make you better and keep you excited about learning and riding. There's no need to overcomplicate it too much. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I will catch you on the next one.